be certain. And yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, we got the eyeball popped up. I know we're live. It's about the 10-second mark. Good morning. My name is Sean. I'm from Traffic Services Toronto Police, or it's Toronto Police Traffic Services. It is the 2nd of June. Happy June. I'm joined with my partner, Brandon, and Sergeant Warren Stein, who is our training sergeant here at Traffic Services. And we're chatting about stuff and things, but want to start off with the Vision Zero enforcement team and where they are today. So they are in 52 Division and 43 Division today. They are, for those who don't know, the VZ team or Vision Zero enforcement team are a dedicated enforcement group that go and target or focus on the big four. So that's speeding, aggressive driving, distracted driving, and impaired driving. And they go to specific areas throughout our city where analytics have shown them to be a problem, where there is a need. So with that out of the way, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's Wednesday. It's weird. It's halfway through. I can't believe it's going very, very quickly.
As it does in the traffic safety program, always new things coming up.
Yes, moving and grooving. We've got a couple of things to talk about today. Part of that is G1 drivers. We put a story out or put a video out a few days ago on TikTok and shared it on other platforms, but it was dealing with G1 drivers who are driving unaccompanied because of the excuses being that there's delays due to the pandemic and the closure of in-car testing. They can't get their G2s. So because they can't get their G2s, they're just driving with their G1s, which is, of course, against the rules. We talked about the consequences there, but the video, we talked about 3 people. Within one day, one officer investigating 3 collisions with unaccompanied drivers. And I ran into him this morning. He says that on the same day, there were 2 more that he investigated. So a total of 5 for that one officer in one day. Sarge, what do you think?
I mean, when you apply for your driver's license, you agree to abide by certain rules and regulations, and part of that is while you've got your G1, you've got to follow what they prescribe. It's a graduated licensing program, and absolutely, maybe you've had your G1 for more than the minimum amount of time, and yeah, you want to get to your G2 level, but you have to stick with what the ministry prescribes. Yeah. COVID has thrown everything into a loop, has shut down Service Ontario locations and driver testing locations for quite some time now, and hopefully soon things will get back to normal. But you can't just arbitrarily decide that you do not need to have an accompanied driver with you while you're out there driving. It's going to impact you not just immediately with regards to the consequences of getting ticketed, but down the road, if you get convicted of any novice driver offenses, you're going to have a driver's license suspension on your records, which is ultimately going to affect your insurance rates. And we all know that G1, G2 drivers have some of the highest insurance rates around, simply because you're new. So now add a suspension to it. Forget the conviction. Just add the suspension, which stays on your license. You're looking at significant insurance increases. You'll probably be put into a facility at that point, and you won't be able to own or have your own car for quite some time unless you have a great job.
Well, yeah, just based on financial costs. I mean, at a certain point, you don't have the benefit. The cost benefit of ownership is gone because you're going to pay so much. You could drive Uber or be delivered by limo or Uber for the same rate of having your own vehicle. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, follow the rules if you are going to be driving for whatever length of time it takes to do it. We're hoping that this is around the corner. There were some rumors on the internet yesterday that it might be happening in the next either Friday or next week, but it's unconfirmed yet, and we don't want to give you false information. So we'll update everyone as soon as we get more info, but hopefully around the corner. So talking about the suspension and the tickets, there's other consequences, and that's for the driver or owner of the vehicle who lent the unlicensed or driver who has a G1 with conditions the vehicle and said, go have at it, go drive this car, knowing that they, or even not knowing that they didn't have a proper license. So the owner of that vehicle or the person in charge of that vehicle can also be charged. And my understanding is that in those situations, those 5 G1 drivers, the owners or persons in charge of those vehicles who lent them those cars were all charged.
Well, and as the owner of a vehicle, if I'm lending my vehicle to someone, the onus does fall on comes right back to myself to check out that driver's license or see if that driver is not suspended. There is a website. You punch in the driver's license number, and it tells you if it's a valid license and if they can drive that. It's a free service through Ontario, and so there's absolutely no excuse for an owner to say, I did not know that they did not have a license. Not only G1, G2, but it goes for businesses and car rental companies and everyone else who needs to verify that someone is properly licensed for that class of vehicle. Then the service is available for them.
That I thought there was a nominal fee, but free, there's simply no excuse. In fact, even if there is a nominal fee, if you're going to loan your vehicle, not just because it's the law, but you want to make sure that your vehicle is going to be used by someone qualified to operate it, and that your insurance is going to cover you in the event of a collision. If you loan your vehicle to someone who's unlicensed, you've likely written off the chances of having your vehicle covered by your insurance company. That's not to say that the vehicle is not insured. It is, and if something happens, the other party is going to be covered, but your vehicle may not be repaired because of a violation on your policy. So important to know. There's other things. What else could there be in relation to that? The fact that if you're a G1 unaccompanied and you get into whether a collision or not, if you're stopped, you're not driving away, and if you're blocking the roadway, you're not going to be given the opportunity to phone a friend to come pick up that car. So you're likely going to incur towing costs in addition to everything else. If it doesn't paint a picture of this is a bad idea yet, I don't know what will.
I was going to ask. I'm somewhat familiar, but for folks who are going to be probably curious as to what constitutes a accompanied driver, I was hoping you could speak to what does an accompanied driver need to have, and what regulations do they need to follow as technically an operator with a G1 driver.
Right. So, I mean, the accompanied driver is there for many reasons. As a new learner driver, you want someone there. Well, give you moral support, but also this is your learning process. So the full Class G license, you've got to have 4 years under your belt, and so you have to be an experienced driver, and that's really the whole concept, allowing you to drive with an experienced driver, so you can learn from them. They can give you some advice. Now, having said that, we've seen some pretty bad experienced drivers out there on the road. So take it with a grain of salt who you're taking instruction from, but it is ultimately it's a risk mitigation strategy that the ministry has put in place to say, we need you driving with someone who knows how to operate the car, that can know the rules of the road, that can remind you when things are going astray. Yeah. And if something does happen, for example, a collision, it's you're going to be covered by your insurance again. Once again, you're complying with your rules of your G1 accompaniment. Now, the responsibilities of that accompanied driver have to be, one, you have to have the full G license. You have to be 4 years into that full G license, and you have to be abiding by the same rules as I wouldn't say the G1, but certain things like alcohol conditions, right? That's probably the biggest one of all. Is you can't have alcohol as an accompanied driver, right? So you are you have to be under those limits that are prescribed by regulation. If you are an impaired accompanying driver, you are no longer an accompanying driver, right? So if you blow a warn or a fail, that G1 driver is relying on you to be in good mental shape, so that you can offer that advice that can be that proper accompanying driver.
Yeah, it's funny. I've heard a lot of arguments that, well, isn't it better for me as a G1 to drive my drunk parent or friend, even though they can't supervise me? Well, is it better? It's questionable. It's not legal, although possibly better than letting them drive home. But there's a taxi. There's other options available. Not the answer isn't to break the rules. You don't want to risk it for yourself, and ultimately it could be a very bad day at the office if things go sideways. So for those that are frustrated G1 holders who are desperately wanting to get their G2s, we feel for you, but you really need to follow the rules, and we've outlined a number of reasons that of why. There have been questions on TikTok, which we tend to get it's like a fire hose of questions. What happens in a collision? What happens as a G1 if I get a ticket? And at the end of the day, you're still responsible for what you do. But we hope that the supervising driver is going to give you that good advice, or provide some sensical, conversation to say why you shouldn't be doing what you're about to do or what you just did, and correct it before it becomes a problem. Now, there was a discussion about impairment. No, it's zero alcohol for the learner. We know that all the way through. You can't have any alcohol in your blood while you G1 or G2. Now, in terms of, I lost my train of thought. There was something else about the G1 unaccompanied that I wanted to talk about, and I forgot it. So we're just gonna move on. I'll come back to it if I remember.
Was it the MAS? Was that what you were asking about?
You brought that up earlier, and that we'll go with that. MAS. So mandatory alcohol screening is something that we have in Canada, and it allows us to demand a roadside screening test of any driver. But Brandon, you were mentioning the fact that it makes sense to do that for the supervising driver, and of course, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant, the MAS. Maybe you want to go into what that deals with or what that involves.
Sure. I mean, mandatory alcohol screening came in back in December 2018, right, when they did a complete overhaul of the criminal code in relation to the driving section. So they renumbered the criminal code, and they brought in a whole bunch of new laws and regulations pertaining to impaired operation by drug and by alcohol. So one of these things was mandatory alcohol screening. And it's gone through a few names. I mean, it started out as random alcohol screening, and they ultimately landed on mandatory alcohol screening. And once again, with many things in Canada, we rely on other parts of the world to kind of be our testing ground. Mm-hmm. And we tend to go a lot to Australia because Australia uses it very well. Mm-hmm. But it is really, quite frankly, used all over Europe, and they are having good results with decreasing the number of impaired drivers on the road. So mandatory alcohol screening is in essence, at any point without any suspicion of alcohol, a police officer can make a legal demand for that operator to provide a sample of their breath into a screening device. Provided certain conditions are met, we have to have that screening device with us. We have to have seen you operating that vehicle, and it's got to be a legitimate vehicle stop. Mm-hmm. In terms of Highway Traffic Act offense, vehicle inspection. But keeping in mind that we can't stop any vehicle for a number of items such as driver's license, ownership, insurance, and sobriety. We can make that lawful demand of the driver. They have to comply with that demand. Failure to do so is a different criminal code charge. But we don't need suspicion. And what I mean by that is prior to December 2018, an officer needed to come up with grounds to suspect that the driver had alcohol in the system, whether that by smelling, they could smell the alcohol, whether by admission, or digging a little deeper, are they just quite not at the part where they've got reasonable grounds to believe they're impaired, but there's something else to suspect that this driver has alcohol in their blood. So prior to MAS coming into effect, we had to have that suspicion. Now MAS is in force, and we do not require that, and we can make that demand at any point of the operator. It only adds maybe 30, 40 seconds to the vehicle stop.
Yep.
And it has actually been challenged numerous times in courts now. So the constitutionality of it was in question right from the start of it. Mm-hmm. But it has made its way through Ontario courts, through British Columbia courts. Manitoba has that's been challenged there, and it has essentially been found to be constitutional, and that police, the public safety aspect of it outweighs the increased amount of time that someone is being essentially detained for the investigation. So if you can get, we make the demand, we let you provide the test, and then we see the results. What they found, and this is where the other countries come into fact, is that oftentimes police officers are not very good at suspecting or looking at the indicia of that impairment, and they miss a number of things that should have been caught. And mandatory alcohol screening is actually catching a lot more impaired drivers and drivers that have more than of 80 plus or 80 and above milligrams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood in their system and being charged now. So it's a very good tool, and it gets impaired drivers off the road. Now, going back to the original question was, what about the accompanying driver?
Yeah.
That accompanying driver is essentially part of the operation of that motor vehicle. They are essentially a key. They are part B of the operator.
They're required to be there. So
So can the accompanied driver be given the demand for mandatory alcohol screening? And I would put it out there that absolutely, they are a key integral part of the operation of that vehicle, and they do need to abide by the alcohol limits as prescribed by the law.
So, can of worms, then, can they be like full impaired operation charge? Like, would that be?
Oh, you've really opened a can of worms there.
Sorry.
Wow, put me on the spot there. Can they be? Interesting question. Yeah, I do not have the answer to that. I would.
We'll have to revisit it. It's a good question.
Yeah. I'll put it up to some of our Crown attorneys. We work very closely with a number of Crown attorneys that give us some great advice. There's a whole group, a drugs and driving committee, that they work out of Toronto, the Ministry of the Attorney General. So that's a good question to pose to them.
Okay, so in the vein of can of worms, we were talking briefly before we came on about the upcoming bill. Is it 282, the Moms Act?
Sorry. I want to come back to the Moms Act, but I did have a light bulb go off. I don't know if you saw it floating above my head. I remembered that thing that when I was lost in the vacuum of forgetting my train of thought, which happens on occasion. It was back to G1 driving, and it was dealing with whether or not the owner or a person in charge of a vehicle who lent the car, if they'd be charged. Well, a lot of people came back and said, well, what if they didn't know? What if I took my mom's keys and she wasn't aware of it? And that comes back to this, take vehicle without consent. It's not theft per se, but the owner didn't know that it was taken, and what changes there. Sarge, maybe you could address that.
Well, it comes down to, if you are the owner of a motor vehicle, at all times you need to know where it is and who's using it. So as much as you may leave the keys near the front door and your kids sneak out and take the car, that is taking motor vehicle without consent. Now, do I want my kid charged with that charge because they did something that they shouldn't have? Well, once again, there's different levels of. We're not here to discuss the morality of things. I mean, really, those are other topics. But it is either a criminal charge for the take order without consent, or you as the owner can get charged on the HDA for the owner operator allowing that vehicle to be taken. It doesn't mean you do get charged. No, obviously we've got a lot of discretion in policing, but that comes down to what the investigation is. If it's involved in a very serious collision, you no doubt you're going to get charged. There's tons of implications when we deal with serious life-threatening or fatality collisions.
I mean, you could draw a parallel, and I'm sure I will get some love for this, but storing your firearms, if you have illegal firearms, you're responsible for what happens to them if you're not storing them properly. Well, storing the keys to a motor vehicle, which in effect is a very potentially you can be used as a weapon. There's a parallel there.
Yeah.
You need to be in control of your things. So do I leave my keys where they can be had? Do I take reasonable measures to protect them or control them? I'm not saying you have to put them in a safe, but maybe your keys should be put somewhere and not left so someone can just walk by and grab them and take off in the middle of the night for a joyride. In any case, something to think about. And with that, I think we've put to bed G1 unaccompanied and can move on to the Moms Act, which you were about to discuss.
Right.
Sorry,
Bill 282. Everyone calls it the Moms Act, but it's really gone through the provincial legislature quite quickly, and because it holds a lot of really good new legislation that's there to protect all road users. So I think there's different aspects of it. There's looking at the e-bike stuff. There's stunt driving. There's new measures in place to protect those cyclists who have been doored. So there's a lot jam packed into this new bill, and what is going to happen with this bill is going to be rolled out over some time. There are a number of factors that they can implement immediately, but there's some other things that need a lot of regulation behind it. So it goes back to various committees that look at the regulations, put the regulation, make sure that the wording's correct, and then put it back to the legislature. They agree or pass the legislations or the regulations, and then those get put into effect.
It looks like we've got a lot of things that we can have separate episodes on, just dealing with moms. But yep. You had mentioned that there were some things that may be coming into effect sooner rather than later. Maybe we can touch on those.
Yeah. So once again, everything's tentative, and until we get the official information from the government, it looks like the stunt driving regulation or changes to that, one part of it, or the vehicle impound part of it, will probably come into effect July 1st.
Wow.
And that is the increase in how long your vehicle is going to be impounded for. So currently you're looking at a 7-day impound, right? So 7-day license suspension, 7-day impound if you get caught and charged with stunt driving. So, and I don't know if we need to go into what stunt driving is, but essentially more than 50 kilometers an hour over the speed limit on highways that have 80 kilometer per hour speed limits or higher, because one of the new changes is going to be if the speed limit on that roadway is under 80 kilometers an hour, so essentially 60 and below. There are a few 70s here and there, but mainly 60 and below. That excess speed is going to be dropped to 40 kilometers per hour over that speed. Now, when we're talking about that, I mean, if you're talking about a 40 kilometer per hour zone and you're driving 80, you're essentially driving 100% over the speed limit, right? You've doubled the speed for that stretch of roadway. So significantly increased for those lower speed limits. But for the if we talk about expressways, you're looking at 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit, doing wheelies, marked departure from what the normal traffic is driving at, weaving in and out of traffic, all those things, racing.
Those jackrabbit starts, we got a lot of questions about those.
Whatever, spinning wheels, yeah. It's probably one of the things that most people don't even realize is stunt driving is the first off the line at that left turn.
Yeah.
If you're first in line and you're in the left turn lane and the light turns green and you jump the line, essentially you make that quick left turn in front of the other vehicles as they're starting to move off the line, that is considered stunt driving.
Yeah.
And that is more not necessarily for the vehicles, but where they put that into effect is for pedestrians, because pedestrians step off the curb right as the light changes. Now the city of Toronto is making some changes to like the advanced signals for pedestrians for the lead pedestrian interval timing, where pedestrians get that kind of head start, that 3, 4, 5 seconds that they can get out there before it turns green for the vehicles. So that's helping, but definitely the stunt driving. If you make that quick left, it is stunt driving. Now I was going to say the impound penalties are going to go from 7 days to 14 days, And a little later in the year, it looks like, because this is something that has to go through regulatory changes, the suspension will go from a 7-day immediate suspension to a 30-day roadside suspension.
Wow, that's going to be fun.
And fines are going up,
not for the
and
folks. Yeah.
implications. Yeah, definitely upon conviction, there's things are almost being doubled for once you get convicted, and mandatory minimum suspensions for those convictions.
7-day impound, 7-day loss of license or suspension. That's enough to motivate the average person now. But we're seeing such an increase in stunt driving offenses that obviously these changes are warranted. But do you think that this will curb the behavior alone? That the risk of loss for such a long period of time, and the financial impact. You're going to be paying storage for a longer period of time, unable to drive to where you have to go, or risk, if you break the rules, risk further charges for driving while under suspension. By increasing all these consequences, do you think we'll curb it, or I guess time will tell?
Well, time's definitely going to tell. I think the way the ministry tends to look at these things, and the way they roll things out is proportional. So they don't want to be too heavy-handed right up front. So they incrementally change these things, and we've seen it with distracted driving.
Yeah,
they've started slowly increasing those fines. I mean, right now it's significant, right? You're paying $615 at the end of the day for that ticket, and upon conviction, you got the suspension as well,
and demerit points.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, everything.
Yeah.
With the stunt driving, I think the upfront suspensions and upfront vehicle impounds are definitely a deterrent. But is it enough? Will the doubling of the impound for the vehicle, and almost threefold for the more than threefold for the suspension, will that curb? We hope so.
Yeah,
but time will
as
tell.
a deterrent, truly, and something that many don't think about is it doesn't matter who owns the car. If you're driving mom's car, friend's car, rental car, it's going into the pound for that period of time. And if it's a rental car, you're paying for that rental fee. It doesn't fall on the rental company. Your rental period is going to be extended, and you're going to be responsible for storage as well as the rental. So there's all sorts of reasons not to do it. And at the end of the day, the most important one is it's not safe behavior. It leads to serious collisions and serious injuries and death on our roadways. And that's why all of this is being done. It's not just so we can, take your car away for longer. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep everyone safe.
Yeah. And I mean, Sean makes a great point there. It's happening in response to something. It's not happening just arbitrarily in terms of we want to increase the punishment around these laws. Over the period of 2020 during the pandemic, the numbers of suspensions skyrocketed. They've been trending upwards since about 2015, according to the Ministry of Transportation. But last year, we saw over 1,600 suspensions related to stunt driving offenses, which is
wow.
It more than doubled. It was massive. So this is an opportunity for us, the police, but the city, the population, the citizens, to make the roads safer by passing legislation that can hopefully deter these kinds of actions.
Hopefully.
Right. And actually, one of the interesting things that they're exploring, and it may very well come into effect, is changing the you can still be charged with stunt driving on private property.
Wow.
Moving from the roadway to private property. Now, not just any private property. They are right now. They're dealing with what constitutes private property, but I would suspect that anything where the public has access to, so parking lots.
Mm-hmm.
I would say parking lots are probably the biggest, because that's where we see a lot of the dangerous, reckless driving behavior.
Interesting.
The takeover style driving behavior, and so, but this will extend those powers for police to go right from just the highway into parking lots where public have access.
And I think other provinces are doing just that and have been for some time. It's Ontario is one of the only ones, I think, that has those public access roads not or parking lots not being covered. So do you think that would be just stunt, or would that be for all collisions?
No, looking at it just for stunt right now. The stunt was definitely identified as a major threat to road users, and through as Brandon already mentioned, so they since stunt driving was implemented in the early part, well, I think 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, they've sort of initial decrease in that type of behavior. But since 2013, 14, 15, it has been that gradual increase. And then 2020, with the lack of vehicles on the roadway,
It was a
people
major spike.
being bored, it was a huge spike, and that was a huge impetus into making this change right now.
That's wild and crazy. That's amazing. It's amazing. I think that it gives us hope that will curb the behavior. So that's good stuff. And we'll have to come back and talk about all the other things that are related to the bill, and see if things actually get approved and announced to everyone when these changes take effect. There's so much to talk about. But with that, we should probably wrap it up. Thanks everyone for coming out today, and for everyone who's watching at home. If you are following us here, we got it. Brandon's on the button. If you're watching on any other platform but Twitter, you should also check us out on Twitter. We post information constantly, as well as where we post or assign the Vision Zero enforcement team to focus their efforts. You can also get us on Instagram at Traffic Services Toronto, and while we are on YouTube at Toronto Police Traffic Services, or Traffic Services Toronto Police, it's the other way around. You can also get us where the action is hot. That is on TikTok. Every day we go live for an hour, and we answer questions in a really casual way. Upwards of 200 people in the room learning about different things. G1 is a hot topic in that room. We're going to be going there right after we wrap here. Come on and join us. If you don't have the app, you can download it. You can watch us through the web. In any case, Traffic Services on TikTok is where it's at, and we will see you there shortly. Thanks again. Thank you, Sarge, for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. The email for anyone who wants to send questions to the Sergeant, to send us to our general inbox. Yeah, I saw the reaction. It's trafficservices@torontopolice.on.ca. We do write back. We get your questions and respond. Thanks again for your time, and we will sign off and be back tomorrow. Take care.